The Lord be with you. So, we move into the story of David, and during this Advent season we've been considering this shift from judges over to kingship, using the backdrop of the franchise Star Wars, with the subtitle, A Light in the Darkness. Now during the Advent season we anticipate and wait for the coming of the Christ child, to overcome all the evil, all the darkness in the world. We wait with expectation as a child is about to be birthed into the world through unlikely people, a young woman and a carpenter. Really nobody's except for their faithfulness. But this child is going to be for us the hope of the world. In our lessons of the past several weeks, we've seen how God has been bringing hope through people who are leading God's people, either as judges, and they're being unlikely examples of faith. And this week, with the story of a young shepherd boy, we hear how God guides and directs this young boy to use the resources he's already been given to take on a giant. These stories that we've been reading, they inform who we are, where we came from, and most importantly, tell us about who this child we're expectantly waiting for is. It is sort of a prequel to what's about to come and what he's about to do. Now, there are a lot of parallels that we can draw from this story of David and Goliath, and some important shifts as well that will happen too. Namely, a shift from war and brutality to one of peace and love and care among all people. The parallels are clear in how God uses unlikely people as well to accomplish great and huge things in our world. When we see the shepherd boy who becomes king, we also see a child in a manger can become king as well, who is the shepherd of people. We also see a look to the inward heart of the person and not to the outward appearances. These activities point us to what to look for in a king who will be the savior of the world. We've been using, again, the Star Wars franchise as a way to draw out the scriptures of the past month or so. And we've done this for three reasons. One, we'll be honest, the new one coming out a week and a half ago, and I know several people have gone to see it, they're probably going to see it over the next week. Two, we have several Star Wars fans here at different levels of Star Wars fandom. Some have helmets and others just appreciate the movies. Then there's also, though, when we go deeper, there's a richness to the plot lines that naturally aligns itself with Scripture. I mean, the overall theme of Star Wars is a struggle between good and evil, or as the church we often see a struggle between light, or it could be the Force, and darkness, and the struggle that light has with darkness. And how we've been that long-awaited people who have been expecting the light to overcome and shine in the darkness, especially in this Advent season. This week, our first lesson probably shared one of the top 10 Bible stories of all time, the story of David and Goliath. And we love this story because it's important, and at its most simplistic, it's about the little guy overcoming the bigger person, or overcoming insurmountable odds. And we see this time and again in the Star Wars movies. We see it with the light trying to overcome the much more and better equipped Empire or dark side. We see it in other movies like Rudy. But when we take a closer look, there's much more going on. So let's take a moment and let's see a clip from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. In the clip we're watching this morning, Luke ends up in a precarious position with the Rancor monster, but There's a few graphic items in this clip, but I don't think they're too terribly graphic. But in particular, Luke calls upon the force to overcome Jabba the Hutt. And Luke goes up against a much larger and much more vicious Rancor monster. But notice what Luke does in order to overcome this monster. He uses his skills, he uses his observation and knowledge, and he uses things that he already knows in order to overcome and take on this monster. Go ahead.
Destroy them. It's your choice, but I warn you not to underestimate my power. You're standing up.
I will not kill that. Oh, Jedi. Jordan, wish that's a mitchell.
So applying all this to the story of David and Goliath, we've given a little bit of a new perspective to the view of this story. It's not simply about the little guy being able to overcome larger things. But in the story of David and Goliath, it's a story about faith in God and trusting that God will work through him. Like Luke calling upon the force and allowing it to guide him through his situation. But David calls upon God to help him through the situation. And it's about seeing the gifts that God has bestowed upon us to do what we see is necessary. And what I love about this story is that it becomes one of perspective. All of the warriors see Goliath as a warrior to go to and go into hand-to-hand combat. They're seeing him as someone who who they need to fight as a warrior. But David sees the Goliath from a different perspective, from the perspective of his vocation, from his work. David sees a couple other things going on. First off, this guy's insulting his God. And God is on our side. More than that, David sees Goliath as a threat to his sheep. And with that shift in perspective, David's able to use the tools that he already has to take on Goliath, using the techniques he would use to protect his sheep from maybe a lion or a bear out in the field. And as they put the armor on David, he starts to feel a little silly about what he's wearing. What are all these things for? This isn't what I normally have or do. But up against more dangerous enemies than that man, I really need is this small sling and a couple of nice smooth stones to get at it. I got this. I know what to do. What was most important was that what David already knew. And he knew that God was with him in being able to take on this challenge. And so Goliath goes and makes fun of him up until the point that that little stone strikes him and sinks into the forehead. It's a new perspective, a new way of thinking. Most importantly, a new way of trusting. As we look towards this evening, when we will welcome the Christ child into our midst, we should be thinking about the hope and the expectation that comes with this child. And Mary gives thanks to God in her Magnificat in our psalm this morning. I know you're probably thinking, well, where the heck did this psalm come from? It says Luke, but it says psalm. What are we doing? It's a song of praise and thanksgiving to God that she's offering up. And she gives thanks to God that God would use her to be birthed into the world. In the opening text of this series, we heard the words from John 1:5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. In Star Wars, no matter how much the dark or the Empire tries to put it down, they're not able to snuff out the light that is the rebellion. In our world, we wait expectantly for the light that Christ brings into our world. The light that will shine in the darkness and illuminate our world with hope, with expectation, and with new life. As we wait over the next couple of hours, let's just sit in that mystery. Let's just sit with that expectation that God will, that God has broken into our world to overcome the darkness. Sometimes, though, we need to change our perspective. We need to consider how God is working through us. How God is working through us to bring light in ways that we already know. And how we need to trust God is at work in those moments when we share that light, when we share that hope, when we share that expectation with others. Amen.